Hi, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is going to serve as our chart lesson for Friday, February the 10th. And today was just fairly, for the most part, this was a trading range day. We did get a breakout that went a little bit higher in the afternoon, but it was real late in the afternoon. If you saw it, it was worth trading, but it was really after the 2:30 cutoff, 2 o'clock, 2:30 cutoff time that I like to trade, and so it's risky trade. But you can see there were a couple of pretty good entries up through here if you want to take it. And the odds are the prices are going to go from the low side at least back up to the high side again. And generally that's when you'll see a breakout that is successful is, sometime either the first 5 minutes of the open or the last 5 minutes or so, because people are doing things differently and the market's not really I don't know how to describe that. I don't want to say the market's not really normal, because I won't say that that's not normal, but stranger things can happen. They can move the markets kind of like the overnight. The volume gets thinner, and there's more motion, and people are trying to get out before the weekend or whatever, and so some different things will happen when that happens. And there was also some news that came out this afternoon about the Italian banks. I'm not sure what time that came out and if that affected the market. I was not watching it by this time over here either, but that could have had some effect on this nice little rally here. I just don't know. But anyway, first of all, you should have had your highs and your lows. Here's your low from the overnight, and you probably would have started with your lines right in here somewhere. And you can see this was a failed break higher that created a double top right here, and then prices sold off. So you probably would have started right in here, but this was a great setup. You didn't want to enter on this one. It wasn't very wise to enter below that doji, so it was better to wait on that double top and get this second entry right here. That was a much better entry, and you can see prices sold off, went to the low side, chopped around in here. So entering right along in here was your best bet on this particular instance down here. And then again, you had another one up in here. I actually traded this one right here as well and scalped out of it, and I'm glad I did scalp out because prices ended up going higher here before they sold off. But you could have actually drawn your trend line. You had a fairly decent trend line up through here on this one. You can see you had a break here, you had a better break here, but you had your first break really right here, and then you had two legs up, two measured legs. And this was really the best trade of the afternoon. I traded this one based on this two-legged measured move right here, and you see that's pretty much a perfect measured move right there. And I sold up here, and I really got in front of these former closes right here by a tick or so. So I entered this blindly and sold this, and unfortunately I just sold a lot of contracts and scalped out on a 4-tick trade, and I wish I would have held that to all the way down, but it was right at lunch. I was just tired of watching all this right here, so I just sold this blindly, scalped out on about 10 contracts and called it a day. And I didn't even really watch price action the rest of the day. I came back after lunch and saw that it sold off and came right back down here to the bottom where I thought it was going to go. But I got caught entering right in here twice, and both times I had to sneak out with a tick or two before prices went higher, and I was lucky that I was able to do that and didn't get stopped out, but that was because of the way I enter. I enter a little differently. But even if you entered below this bar, when prices went higher, turned down, and then couldn't go any lower, you still could have put your stop right here and gotten out at break even or maybe even plus a tick. And that's generally what I do. And because I was thinking, I really, to be honest with you, when prices broke here and we had these two legs, I thought this was a great setup. And so I got trapped right here. I was lucky to get out with a tick. And then I got trapped again right here. And again, that's probably my mistake for going short below a bar that actually had a bullish slant. But generally that's a good setup, and I took it, and I got trapped again, and again I was lucky to sneak out with a tick. When we got hung up in these three bars started overlapping here, I talk about that a lot. When you start to see those overlap, that's a congestion. So if you can get out at break even or break even plus one, or maybe get a tick or two, just go ahead and take your tick or two and get out, because you can look for another entry, and that's what I did. And then I was able to catch this entry and get a really good entry. And again, I'm kicking myself because if I'd held a couple of runners, I could have added another 5 points, 5 or 6, 7 points to my totals today. But I'll be honest with you, I was so happy to get a nice quick scalp after fighting all this stuff for an hour or so, that I just was happy to get out and make some money today. But there were a couple other entries as well. I'll show those. There was one off the trend line here. There was one here. It wasn't a great setup, so I didn't mark it. There was another one here. These are all two-legged pullbacks to the EMA, and this was a second entry long. Here's your new count 0 pullback, first entry, pullback, second entry, and even in here, you got a high. Prices came down, you had a pullback here and then another leg down. So even in there, if you went to a smaller chart, you would see 2 legs from this high to here. But even without doing that, there's still a second entry long counting off this high right here. And same thing right here, 1 leg. This leg had 2 legs in it, as you can see. Down, pullback, and then down. And this is just basically a 2-legged pullback. But on a smaller level, there were 2 legs right in here as well. So, and the same thing right here, but I didn't like this one because by the time you get here, it's way too close to the high. Even though it would have worked, I was still thinking short in here, trying to get short, and probably many of you might have been doing the same thing. So if you were, I can understand why you did that. And I was really lucky I didn't take at least one loser today on these two, but prices would work their way back down here and gave me a chance to get out both times without it taking out my stop. And that's another reason I usually keep my stop above my entry bar, just for that reason, because if you had tightened it up here, you would have got stopped out right here and probably lost a tick or two, which still wouldn't be a bad trade because you get a chance to make it back. But by doing it the way I did it, I didn't take a loss, and I was able to get a tick both times. I think I actually took 1 tick here and 1 tick here and just got out, and then I made my money on this move right here. And I should have made a whole lot more, but that's the way it goes. Woulda, shoulda, coulda doesn't count in trading, unfortunately. So get what you can get and be happy. And especially if you got a little trend. Even though this is a trading range, this is a nice trend up. This was a nice trend down. And you actually could have had this trend line right here. You can see that. So there's your break, but price is still sold off. And this should have been red right here. I don't know why I've got that blue. It doesn't really matter. Everybody should know that that's a short right there. And when prices try to go higher that second time, right there, there was no entry prior to this until right here. So that was the first chance you could enter. If you didn't enter there, you definitely could have entered again right below this bar. And it was a nice ride down. And this is where I would have looked to exit, or at least tighten my stop. And if you'd have tightened it above each bar coming down, you could have ridden it all the way to right here if you didn't just automatically exit down here. But sometimes it's better to move your stop because occasionally it'll shoot on through just like it did up here. And if you had your stop, you cost yourself a couple more points. And so sometimes it's best to just kind of move your stop above each new bar and then let the market decide when it takes you out. And if you'd have done that, you would have exited maybe 2 ticks off this low. So either way, you still get the same, you pretty much get the same outcome. But if prices would have gone on lower, then it still gives you a chance to stay in the trade. And we already talked about this, but but that's pretty much it. It's Friday. I'm going to call it a day. Hopefully you see the highs and the lows here on this trading range, and I got some emails today asking about it and some other people traded it. And how do you know to stay out of this stuff right in here? The only thing I can tell you is the overlapping bars. Really, your best trades are, because you can kind of see here, you're able to get in at the low. If you entered this trade long right here, you're getting in at almost the very low. You're going in above a bar with at least a bullish slant, where up here, if you waited to get short, you had to do it here, and then you've already had a pretty good bit of movement. This was okay. This trade's not really the one I'm looking at, but this was an inside bar, and those will fail a lot of times. Even though that trade is a great setup with a great bearish bar, an inside bar will fail quite often. It failed there, and then by the time you got to get in here, well, this bar, even though it's got a stem up here, it's still got a green body. But, you know, it looked tempting to me, and I took it myself, so it wouldn't be surprised if any of you dropped me a line and say you got caught in there too. And hopefully you were smart enough to realize that when you started seeing these overlapping bars, whether you entered here or here, it gave you a chance to get out with a tick or two or three right in here. And when you started to see these overlapping bars, that's your signal. Even though sometimes prices like here, you got the overlapping bars and it still broke lower, it's not worth risking to see if that's going to happen. And if it starts overlapping here and there's multiple overlapping bars and you've got congestion, don't fool around with it. Just take what it'll give you, get out, and live to trade another trade. And then just like we did here, and I came back and made my money on this one. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. Hope everybody had a good trading week, and we'll be back next week. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.